All right, so we just talked about RAS, and we're going to talk a little bit about something else here, and that's going to be RADIUS. You may be familiar with RADIUS and just not know it, how familiar you are with it. But hopefully I'm going to be able to break it down for you. So a naive approach to thinking about RADIUS is that people immediately look at the words dial-in, and a lot of times they associate that with the 56K modem. Now, and they immediately will throw out RADIUS. Now, why do I say that? Well, because back in the ancient days, when we used to write with stones and tablets and stuff, we had 56K modems. You'd actually have to take a phone and actually dial in, quote unquote, dial in to a internet service provider to get you access to the internet. So that was a dial-up modem. Well, RADIUS has come quite a long way since then, and it is the most popular authentication service in the world. Well, why is that? It's kind of neat if you've never seen this before. So let me write this up here. Most popular. Okay. And what this does is this gives us a way to do the AAA here, right? The authentication, authorization, and accountability. But there's a problem. There's an innate problem here that RADIUS does. It sends the username over clear text, but the password is encrypted. Password's encrypted. So, why is that important? Well, if we just take a look over here at this back end here, we'll have a RADIUS server which allows people to dial in to a network. Okay? On the back end of this RADIUS server, there will be an Active Directory that sits back there. Okay? Remember, that's the hierarchical. That's typically, puts it in these different objects, and then, you have a unique identifier. In my case, it's BBE. Let's just say. Right? So if I use or utilize a RADIUS server, typically this means that I am moving. Usually it's great. RADIUS is great because you are moving. And so usually we'll see this in a MAN. That's right, I can't make this stuff up. A CAN or a ISP. So the MAN, that's a metropolitan area network. This one's a campus area network. And then that's an internet service provider. Okay? So the metropolitan area network would be like downtown Huntsville, how they have all the Wi-Fi access points you can hit up for free, or an airport or something like that. That might be a metropolitan. A campus would be just like it states, usually at a university, or if it's a large warehouse or series of warehouses, like some of the places over on the Arsenal, let's say. But usually what the most impressive implementation is an ISP. And why do I say that usually you see people that are moving? Well, in a metropolitan area, maybe not in downtown Huntsville, but Manhattan or Shanghai or somewhere super popular, you probably would see that. Campus, you would see people moving, and using an internet service provider like, I don't know, Verizon or AT&T or somebody else that let's just keep to the mobile example here. Then it becomes very interesting because it will work in tandem with something like Active Directory and allows for that remote access to the server to give you a way that is over UDP. UDP, right? So what that means is that, if you remember, that's a fire and forget protocol. So it'll send. It doesn't even care if you receive it. It's still going to send it. It's not making the connection, so it's a connectionless oriented protocol. UDP is. And typically, things that are moving or things that are heavy bandwidth, like video, streaming video, things like voice over IP, streaming games, anything with high bandwidth usually will go over UDP, a fire and forget. And a lot of times, and I think that we probably saw it earlier on tonight when we lost the connection here, that if it's going over UDP, it'll kind of buffer and freeze, and then all of a sudden 30, 45 seconds later it'll catch up. And then you can kind of rewind it a little bit if you want, but sometimes even the audio kind of sounds like a chipmunk, but the person goes really fast and it'll catch up. Or if you're watching Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu, whatever cranks your tractor as far as the video streaming is concerned, a lot of times you'll see that buffering. And so why is this important? Well, all of these different types of remote protocols are super important, especially when you're talking about money. Money. Check it out. If, let's just say here, I have I'm on a Verizon, you know what? I'll throw them a bone. We'll just say Verizon 5G, which I hear it. I hear it's mythical, but they say that it's working, which I believe. Let's say I have a Verizon 5G. Well, over here we'll just say this is the Verizon Cloud, right? And so in the Verizon Cloud, underneath it here, they're going to have Active Directory. And then underneath it, it's kind of like an octopus, if you will, right? It looks like tentacle things right here. Underneath it, they're going to have My Object. Well, in My Object here, there might be a SIM. There might be an IEMI. There might be, first name, last name. And just some other basic. And then in addition to that, this one will have metadata that's linked to another branch here. That's maybe, we'll just call it the billing department. Yep, let me get around that. So if you pay your bill, then you can access the network. Right? If you can pay the bill, you can access the network. If you don't pay your bill, they shut you up. Right? You don't work. And so something like a RADIUS server here. So if Verizon runs a RADIUS server here, what they will do is they still will do a lookup in a directory underneath it. But this is kind of the face of everything. So let's say here, I don't know, we'll just draw a house here, and we'll say this is me, right? So this morning, when I get up, first thing I do is do whatever I do first, and then I look at my phone, or maybe I look at my phone because I got a timer. Right? So I wake up, and immediately behind the scenes, my cell phone, here, that's my cell phone. My cell phone is beaconing out latently to Verizon. And if you recall, they have, Verizon has the So let's say that each one of these is cell towers, or are cell towers. And what we essentially will end up seeing here in a second when I finish rolling this out is a quick way for us to draw the Hear Me Now. And so essentially what ends up happening is through directional antennas and what's called line of sight, they're able to have all of these antennas connected back and forth to each other over a certain frequency using their Verizon network. And so when the cell phone is paid, what it'll do is it'll communicate with the nearest tower here. So I'll draw a little lightning bolt. We don't even have to tell it to communicate with it. It'll communicate with the nearest cell tower. That cell tower will then be connected to a landline somewhere that typically will be connected over fiber to the Verizon network. So each one of these would be connected via landline to the Verizon network. And the cool thing is once you jump in your car, let's say here that I got this this hot looking car right here, right? I've got this cool looking car, and I jump in the car with my cell phone, and I immediately start to traverse the network, right? I'm going, maybe over here is where I work. Well, as I'm going through the river and to the woods here to work, what this thing is doing is when I get here, it's pinging this cell phone tower, right? When I get here, it's pinging this cell phone tower. When I'm getting here, pinging this one. When I get here, it's hitting whatever one. Open the shortest path first and give it to me wherever I'm closest to, right? And so with each one of these, it'll do a lookup. And so inside my phone here, the unique identifier might be my IEMI, and what it will do is it'll latently make a connection to the antenna, whatever one I'm closest to. That antenna will pulse the signal through it, down through the wire on the back end, and then hit up via fiber this Amazon RADIUS server. And the way that I kind of remember it is the first time I went to New York City was when I was a little tiny fella. And a lot of cab drivers used to have non-digital scales or non-digital cab meters in there. And they kind of looked like this right here, where they would have a little flag on it. They have a little checkerboard flag. I'm horrible at drawing that flag there, sorry. And each one of these would be kind of checkered in between. And that didn't really mean anything other than, for me to try to show you. When you would get in the car with the taxi driver asks you where you're going, and immediately push down the meter, push down the flag. And so same sort of scenario here. When you traverse the network, what you're doing is you're hitting up their network. Their network's going into the back end over here. It's saying, hey, I have this IMEI right here on the back end directory server in my white pages here, and he's trying to authenticate. Is it okay if I authenticate? Well, you know what? Let's check and see if he paid the bill. Okay, billing says yep, he's paid the bill, and it happens lickety split. Then it comes back and says, okay, well, he provided us the right username, right password, and all that may be on your phone, on your device, so you don't even have to do anything. It comes back through, sends back a 0 or a 1, right? Binary, 0, 1. 0 means no, 1 means yes. And then it allows you to sext your significant other, maybe if you're watching YouTube while you're driving, or whatever you need to do, talk on your cell phone. Bless you. Whatever you need to do, it's gonna let you do that. And because of that, we're able to traverse this network and keep alive. Because remember what I was talking about, it's moving, and the movement is a UDP. So it allows us to keep moving, and the keep alive here is what Radius uses in order to do its authentication. So by doing that, it gives us some really good benefit. Well, Cisco came along and started to think, hey, we think we can do this better. Why don't you buy a Cisco device, and we'll see what we can do for you. So usually Cisco will set up something similar to what I just mentioned, and that is called a TACACS Plus. Sometimes you see people wearing a shirt that says the Department of Redundancy Department. Well, this stands for Terminal Access Control Access Control System. And since it's Cisco, they put some lipstick on the pig and put a plus after it. So there was original TACACS that was open source. Cisco said, meh, if they buy a Cisco device, we'll put our lipstick on and we'll call it TACACS Plus. And so Cisco is able to manage remote connections via those Cisco appliances, like their most popular, or one of their most popular, their Cisco firewall. And so that handles remote access. And so these two collectively, the Radius and the TACACS, are compared to each other in this diagram, or this chart that you see right here. These two are compared together. Will you have to know this for your exam? Probably not. Probably not. But at a high level, know that both of these are used for remote access, getting into networks, and they function just a little bit differently. Just a little bit differently. In this case, you can see that it is a little bit more overhead with TACACS because it does not only an authentication, but then it says what kind of authorization, so you can get a little bit more granular with the controls. But both of these on the back end, are likely going to be connected to an Active Directory server to allow you to be authenticated using single sign-on, or if you're using that two-factor authentication, but utilize the back end of the Kerberos and the Microsoft login for NTLM, using LDAP as the query language to interact with the directory. LDAP is the query language that interacts with the directory server, like Active Directory. And so it becomes quite important if you don't know where this unique identifier is for this person. You may not be able to do lookup on it. And typically with Active Directory, we utilize, or directory services, the organizational hierarchy in what's called an X500 scheme. And that X500 is what's called the Directory Information Tree, which is the hierarchical structure, the DIT. So this is something that if you export your X500 schema for your Active Directory, you can stand up another Active Directory right next to it on another server, and then import that X500 into that directory server. So it's uniform from servers to servers, which is kind of neat, kind of flexible that way.